miss that? I just told you about it. What else? Oh, I know. We're doing things a little differently tonight. We're shaking it up a little. And what we're doing tonight is the Nurse Jackie ladies graciously had the brilliant idea to bring in a dry erase board and actually show people how they break their stories, which Robin and I, you know how into the processes we are. We were into that. So what we're going to do tonight is that's going to be in the second half. So just know that. So we're going to go to questions earlier in the first half. Then we're going to take our break like we always take for food and drink and breaking. And if you're at your breaking point, whatever.
Go to the bathroom.
Just know that when we come back, writers in the room or even people who are just interested in knowing what writers are like, that's when we're going to start like showing how the breakdown goes, okay? How the breakdown of the story goes. So what else am I leaving out?
Please, no pitches, scripts, or business cards. Everybody's really donating their time to be here. All the money from this goes to benefit the foundation. We have this amazing library downstairs. If you haven't been there, open to the public. What other one? We have a
vets program. We have our vets writing program that is partly supported by all of you. Coming to these kind of events. We have our screenwriters going into high schools, teaching screenwriting in high schools program, which is a really good program that you guys help fund by coming here. I think that's about it.
That's it. Hey, Wynn, how about you and I sit here so we can keep those two together and look into their eyes? So, yeah, Nurse Jackie. Jackie. We have Linda Wallem and Liz Brixius. Come on, guys.
Hi, you guys.
Were a lot of you guys here to watch the pilot again? Yes. Pretty fucking good pilot, isn't it?
Yeah, you can. Why don't we start with just...
First of all, are there any writers in here I owe money to or anything? Okay, now we can go on.
Yeah, get comfy, get relaxed.
Bury the View. This is fantastic.
This is like our version of The View. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah,
Go on.
It's a little more anxiety-filled than The View, but...
Well, just wait.
Well, it's writing, so there has to be a certain amount of tension and terror and fear. I'd like to start with just how you guys became a team, or are you a writing team?
We've been. Am I on?
I don't think so. What do I need to do? Just let me handle it. I just have a way with these kind of things. Hello?
Magic.
I'm on. Thank you.
I had never had a writing partner, nor had Linda, and we were living together. We were living together, and I was just a screenwriter off on my own, and Linda and I were together, and she and Bob Greenblatt, who was at the time at Showtime, had decided that they wanted to do a pilot about addiction in the Midwest, and I was, at the time, getting ready, and Linda and I had been at sushi one night and thought, wouldn't it be funny, because we're both sober, to write a screenplay called Mean and Sober about two women who are really, like, hot in AA and figure, for a weekend we can drink and nobody will know, and everything goes wrong. And so we were going to call it Mean and Sober, and,
also because of how we were very different when we were loaded. I was all like, hoo, and she was really mean.
I was very mean.
But
and in real life she's really tough, and in real life I'm really needy. But when I drink, I'm a bitch, and she, the tough one, gets really needy. So we thought, wouldn't it be great to do this thing? Meanwhile, Bob and Linda have hatched this idea, and I'm working on my own thing. And Linda says, "Do you want to do this with me? Do you want to jump in and not do the movie thing, and we can write what became Insatiable together?" And we did, and it was miraculously fun. And the way that we did it actually was we put a river through the middle of town, and I said, half the people live on this side of the river, half the people live on that side of the river. You invent those people, I'm going to invent these people. And at breakfast, we'll have them meet and see what happens. Wow. So it's just about it's about inventing ways to make things fun. We didn't sit down and say we're going to do an outline and it's going to be this. It's like we just know there's a river that runs through town.
And Bob knew the town because Bob and I grew up together in Rockford, Illinois, the most boring place in the world. And we thought, but no, addiction in the Midwest is hilarious because everything's fine. Everything's fine.
It's
Nobody
not the
talks
most boring
about it.
place because
Well,
it's the screw capital of the world,
that's
number one,
true.
and the sock monkey was invented there.
Exactly,
so,
in Rockford. Now
So,
you know
you
why
know.
we got the fuck
So
out of
was
there.
Insatiable
So they
mean
shot-
and sober?
No. So then they shot it. We shot it.
With including Peter Facinelli, who we
Is Dr. Cooper.
as a paralyzed ice skater married. His name is Sandy, married to a woman named Sandy, and they're the Sandys, who are ice skaters, and he's paralyzed. Anyway, we fell in love with Peter during that, but it had a gigantic cast. It was Andrea Martin, it was Kurtwood Smith from '70s Show, it was
Barr Flynn Boyle, Andy McDowell.
the Pope. I mean, everybody was in this. There were so many people in this pilot, and then we realized right then that's when Bob he went with Californication.
But he called us about a month later and said, okay, we didn't do Insatiable, but I have a chance to get Edie Falco at Showtime. And there's a property. Take it.
Lionsgate had a script written by Evan Dunsky, and that's why it's created by the three of us. He wrote this script. I believe back then it was called Nurse Mona.
It was called Mona, yeah.
Yeah. We changed it to Jackie. No. So, and Evan is
Jackie's funny. And
But yeah, and Evan met with us. We read the script and we met with Evan, and he said he gave us our blessing. He said, "Hey, go do this." I'm not sure what I would do different, and it was really it was cool. It was really dark. It would
have been an awesome graphic novel.
Yeah.
That's how it read. Most of it was in voiceover, and parts of it were animated. For example, at night, the doctors were named Dr. Sarcophagus and Dr. Mellifluous, and at the night they all turned into bats and hung in the janitor's closet. But what appealed to Edie about it was, it's an ER, it's New York City, and it's life and death.
right.
And and we wanted to bring a really wicked sense of humor, and we had unfinished business with our addiction pilot.
And we had learned from Insatiable, okay, instead of 12 people, let's focus on one person who this show's going to kind of circle around. And when you hear the words Edie Falco, it's a little easy to go, okay, now we know who to write this for. And to tailor for her was a joy.
So, let's just talk about that a second, because I often do that. I don't always, I do it maybe in a fantasy way. I don't always end up, I'm not always in a situation where I know I would have this person, but I like to think about somebody and write it to them. So when you do that, what are you looking at in her, or what were you responding to, or is it possible to put into words?
Yeah, Lizzie and I, we looked at each other and I said, okay, because I'm an old actress. I said, you know what? Let's write this. Let's put actress catnip in this. Let's do all the stuff that would be really cool for somebody as good as Edie to play. Like, okay, let's just go for it.
Is part of actress catnip that all these men want to have sex with her?
God, no.
Oh,
no,
no.
not at all. It was all about what to play.
Okay, so
That's all it was.
It's like, how in like the best work that Tom Cruise ever did was in Collateral. And it's because he had this big of a range to act in, and so he had to calibrate just so perfectly. And like Edie is somebody who's all about calibration. She loves it. She loves nuance. She you can write. She's the only actress in the world who says, "I want less lines." She wants to play it. So you give her these things that she's going to hit. And if you know that during a good portion of the show, and not in season 4, it's really fun because she's struggling with sobriety. So the lid is off, but when that lid was on, Edie got to play calibrations, and that was really fun for us to write for her.
And to give her interesting characters to have contrast in her life. That was part of it too, was be able to, we need somebody, a doctor who's a doofus, but you love him. And that's why we wrote that for Peter Facinelli, period. Dr. Cooper was him.
Because we just worked with him, so we knew that he was capable of that.
So you know that he, in other words, what you're saying is she's the center, and so that dictates to you who's going to have to be spiraling around her.
It's funny that you say that, because we when we first started, we would talk about, if you watch this, Linda and I, when we lived together, would watch The Sopranos, and we would rewind Edie's scenes, and she might have only had 4 minutes of screen time in the 52 minutes, but the impact that she left was so enormous. And so we would say, imagine if Carmela were the center, were the sun in the universe, and everything were in orbit around her. Imagine if Edie Falco were in the center and everything were in orbit around her. Edie is the sun. She is the center of the universe, and everybody else is in orbit around her. So, yeah.
Right, because part of it is her complete, steel. There's a steely quality underneath. Robin was talking about it today. She plays.
Speaking of steely people, Robin. No, I'm kidding.
Well, hardly, but she plays this. Really, she's playing in the pilot. You have her constantly showing this depth and compassion. That's what you were mentioning today.
Yeah, Winnie and I had a discussion. We're doing our typical jumping around here, but we had this discussion about, from our point of view, the assumptions we made as to why she was an addict, basically. And what I made up in my mind was that it was hard to be that compassionate, so that she wanted something that was numbing her feelings so that she could be, show up at an ER and deal with all the stuff that she was dealing with, because she was so not doing what you're not supposed to do, hugging people and really getting involved with people, not to mention all the horrible things she was doing, like giving away some guy's organs who didn't, necessarily want to be an organ donor, but that was what she was numbing. And then Winnie had a whole other reaction.
Well, my take on it was similar, but it had to do with that she knew she was doing wrong because she was betraying her family. So she was forced to do all this sort of overt good. She was forced to sort of do over-the-top good, like giving away the organs, because psychologically she was living in so much torment because she knew she was wrong. She knew she was in the wrong.
You're making us so much smarter than we are. Well, the thing is that Linda and I both struggled with addiction, and you're predisposed to it or you're not. And if you are predisposed to it, the beauty of addiction when you're writing for a character is it is a constant undertow pulling you in the opposite direction of what you're acting. So Jackie has to go empty bedpans, or she's dying to get to this, but there's something urgent happening, but she's also jonesing. So it gives the actor something to do. That is also part of the actor catnip. The other thing is, people have asked us over and over, why is she an addict? And we actually tell you in season 4, we tell you she explains
find out the truth
when she first abused. The first time she ever took painkillers, not for pain, and she does explain why.
Not that necessarily that's when you know you're an addict, but I think it was important for everyone to finally know what was that ground zero for her.
Yeah.
Can I ask something that I've been really wanting to ask? What is up with her with the wedding ring and the secrecy?
This is all Linda Wallem's idea. Go.
No, it's so fascinating, but it was kind of. It was kind of blowing my mind. Not just that she wasn't wearing I get that she's having an affair with a married man, but that's only a year old in the beginning, right? And she's
married. He's not married.
Oh, I said it wrong because I'm old. I meant she's married and she's having an affair. But that's a reason to. But you know what I mean. It's a secret that she's got kids. It's a secret that she's got a lot. Her whole life is a secret.
Yeah, I really responded to that because when I was using, even when I wasn't, you compartmentalize your life and you want people to mind their fucking business, because if they ask questions, they're going to find out who you really are and what your deal is. So in my mind, she just when she started working there, she said, I'm not going to be tied to this. I need to be free because I don't want anyone to ask questions. I don't want it because a ring says so many things. So
fascinating.
And part of being an addict is you in and out. You hide it. You are. Am I? No. Yes. No. You're. What's my lie? Oh shit. I got to cover my lies. What am I? And this is what we've been doing for 3 years. Jackie's lies have kind of caught up with her. So.
And the other thing is, it is because if you're writing a book, it would be a lost detail. But if you're watching it, it tells a story of its own. So that if you're doing your taxes and you happen to look up, you get the whole picture. And I think that's important. I mean, television is a visual medium, otherwise it's radio. So it shows something,
You've
it's some storytelling.
You got so much mileage out of the ring when she can't get the ring off, and the lengths that she has to go to. We're talking about the whole first season because Winnie and I went back and watched it, but she literally has to break her own finger. I mean, that seems like pretty extreme.
We had so much fun in the room that day because when we were thinking of it and the room went, no! And we went, yes, now we're doing it, because they freaked out.
Do you ever,
And is that how you figure out a lot what you want?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Like if people are really have a...
You're freaking out, we're on the right track.
That's right.
Yeah.
do you ever get
this mic? Don't shout. Use the mic.
Do you guys ever get upset? Do you ever get upset, or is there a line that you won't cross with Nurse Jackie? And do you ever get upset by some of the things that you're having her do? And by upset, I just mean, this is because it's so morally ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's wish fulfillment, but at the same time, it's kind of like I just don't want someone else to be making those decisions on my behalf. The things that she's running around doing.
I think I kind of worked out some stuff. Like I got to work out because part of me always thought, I got sober too early, Which, by the way, I had an interesting journey. I did. I had 18 years sober, and I decided last year, hey, I'm going to drink. And I did, and it was very interesting. Done. I'll have a year on May 21st. Wow. But it was, bullshit. Anyway, no, it was. I appreciate it, but I understand it's how you hold addiction, and it helped. In Nurse Jackie, there were a lot of things that it was wish fulfillment. We got to let shit out.
To play it out.
Yeah.
And Edie's been on television shows saying, that she loves being Jackie because Jackie says the things that Edie wishes she could say. And, Jackie says the things that I wish I could say. I wish I had that much confidence to tell somebody to go fuck off. I wish I had that.
It comes through that, go fuck yourself. And it comes through her mouth. You're like, ha-ha.
Yeah.
Wow. It just feels good. Everyone should have an Edie puppet because it's really powerful.
Don't you think that's something you're looking for as a writer, that you're looking for that character or characters that you can sort of pour out what you want to live out through to some extent, especially in series where you have to write so much. So it's almost like, what's going to pour out of me?
Yeah.
And it makes life a little easier, too, if you just realize, come on, let's face it, we're writers, so none of us have any real self-esteem anyway, but isn't it nice when you start to let some of your own experience really is the gold sometimes, no matter what it is. If you can pour it into whatever character you're writing, it is going to show.
Yeah.
And lie sometimes when you pitch. Say, this happened to me. And I swear, executives go, it must be real. They said this,
That's so smart.
Works.
Because people really do perk up when you say this happened to me. And then sometimes the next thing, if you say, oh, no, I shouldn't be telling you this, then they're like,
that works.
What? What is it? It happened to you and you shouldn't be telling me?
That's actually awesome. So, no, it is. So just getting back to the formation of the pilot, when you're looking at that script that Evan wrote, and you have his blessing to redo it or to rethink it. So one of the what are some of the things you're going, okay, it's got to be more this, or what are some of the first decisions you made?
Well, the first thing is we had to get out of her head, this nurse's head, because there was too much voiceover. There was too much her observing as opposed to her being in the middle of it. It had to be very proactive.
And it's interesting, too, because in the first, we begin with the voiceover. We begin with the T.S. Eliot poem, and we end with the Make Me Good, God, But Not Yet. And we did it a couple more times in the first season, and then Edie said, I really don't like doing voiceover. So, so number one, that was our first thing, was to loosen ourselves from the voiceover. The second thing was to really clarify that this was an emergency room, because in the pilot that we read, for example, she would be in the operating theater singing Wagner, or not singing Wagner, but like Wagnerian buns, and there'd be opera playing. And it's like we had to really make this super authentic, because when we went out to go meet Edie, she is the most salt of the earth. She's just so basic. And it's like, she doesn't want, I'm shocked that she even did it because of the pieces of fanciness that have been in it from time to time, because that's just not her cup of tea.
What do you call a fanciness?
Beginning with T.S. Eliot, doing voiceovers.
Okay. Fair enough. So in other words, she's like real, like meat and potatoes, like
Yeah.
like. The,
But in all fairness, the T.S. Eliot poem, which Lizzie found, I mean, the key to that pilot, I think, is that line, "Make me good, God, but not yet."
But that's not the T.S. Eliot poem.
Or well, that was her off of the poem in the
Right.
beginning. It meant everything. It was like so who she is, So
well,
that
you give in the pilot, you give exactly who she is.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, again, looking back at it, and forgive me if I'm paraphrasing this, but it's just flat out starts out and it's like, hey guys, let me tell you what the series is. Jackie's quoting from a nun, and it's the whole situation. The same people who have the greatest capacity for good also have the greatest capacity for evil.
Okay, true story.
Yeah.
That really happened. I mean, I had a nun named Sister Jane DeShano, and I'd gotten in an enormous amount of trouble and disappointed everybody. Who was on the verge of expulsion, and we were in the art room, and she wasn't my English teacher. She was actually my art teacher, but we were cleaning paintbrushes, and I was just on the edge of believing that I was the worst person in the world. And she said, "Sweetheart, the people with the greatest capacity for good are also the ones with the greatest capacity for evil." And that gave us a huge range for Jackie because we knew she was going to be amoral. We knew that she was going to be an amoral central character because that's what Showtime was doing at the time. Dexter, Weeds. I mean, that's their bailiwick, or at least it was. And then my dad always used to quote St. Augustine saying, "Make me good, God, but not yet." And I had always, always, always wanted to put in a movie or a medical procedure somebody who says, "Let us go, then you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized on a table." I remember that from 10th grade. It just stuck with me. I thought it was such a gorgeous image, and I was like, "Okay, will you let me be a queer poetry major right now?" And she
go
said,
because
"Fine."
I couldn't pull that out of any part of me.
But then what we did to alleviate the fanciness, we wanted to let you know she probably had a Catholic education. She's Catholic. She's and you already know she's working class. She's a nurse. We were coming down, and we were shooting it. And I'm like, "We got to put gum on the bottom of the shoe." And our director wouldn't let us. He was like, "Absolutely not. No." And Wallem and I were like, "Let's talk to the people in post because there's gum on the bottom of that shoe." Because
After a heated exchange on the set.
big fight.
Because
Because the reality is, he's like, "Why?" And I said, "Because we have to let people know on page 1 in the first 30 seconds that it is okay to laugh." Right. It's a clown moment.
First time we were at a screening that comes down and people see the gum and they laugh and like, good, okay.
Yeah.
And Valley of the Dolls, too. That was supposed to, hey guys, this is funny. Ha, so.
Yeah.
This is your instinct that you're going to you're going to go super dark at times, but you're going to always
have gum.
You're going to always
have gum.
Exactly, on the bottom of a shoe.
Something.
Right.
And we should give a shout out to when we first screened the pilot to, when you've been doing it long enough, you build these relationships. And Linda had a fabulous relationship with Michael Patrick King because of the comeback and because of Sybil and because they'd worked together for a million years. And she said, "Michael, what are your thoughts on this?" And he said, "I think you guys should start with Valley of the Dolls." And it was his idea to start with it. And so you get ideas from other writers. It's not like it's, and it's about showing your work and not being afraid to hear criticism or notes or take advice. And when you take the advice, 10 years later, give credit to the person who gave it to you. It was Michael Patrick King.
Right. In public, give credit in public.
Yeah.
And he was just here last week, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
As you guys know.
He's fat in this chair, I bet.
So
can I just ask, go back to something, because just as another writer, I really want you to talk more about literally what are the things that you see as actor catnip.
Linda was a performer, so go.
Okay, I think a scene can get interesting really fast, I think that actors want to get in it. And I knew we had Edie, who doesn't want to waste any time. And so all of our scenes, really, you kind of, you can get to something interesting fast. I mean, I know we all like to write, "Hey, how are you? How was your weekend?" The chuffa, we call it, right? But I think with some performers, depending on who if there's certain talent you're trying to get this to, that actors really are looking for, what's the motion? What am I playing? What am I playing? So you have to get out of your writer head sometime and just go, literally, what am I playing in this? I get to a point where my little characters are all in 3D waiting for something to do in front of me. I'm like, shut up. They're looking for something to play. And I think that writing can be beautiful on paper sometimes, but when it gets down to it, it's what is there to play here? And it doesn't have to be a 5-page scene. A lot of our scenes on Nurse Jackie are
half page, 3/4 page,
2 pages, at the most. But you can get somewhere and you learn to edit as you're writing too, because I don't know. I just think that when an actor, Edie always says she wanted to know more about this character, and she loved the people in her life. The other thing we had to do was and Bob Greenblatt was adamant she needs a best friend, and we said, well, let's do a female doctor, but this isn't going to be Sex and the City. This is two women that really respect each other And then who we thought it was going to be, and then Eve Best comes in and blows our mind, and oh my God, she's a Brit, great.
In our minds, O'Hara was going to be an icy blonde American clinician.
Yeah.
And then Eve Best, who'd just been doing Moon for the Misbegotten on Broadway, comes in like boots with no laces, like twigs in her hair, dirt on her face. Sits there, she's like, "Do you want the accent or not?" And we're like, "Just whatever you want to do," and just automatically came to life and told this story. The butter knife story, which, again, true story. My mom wanted to see how bunny rabbit worked when she was a little girl. Went out back with a butter knife, cut it open because it was dead, to see how it worked. And I was like, oh my God, that gross story is coming out of a mouth that speaks the Queen's English, and I am absolutely enchanted.
I agree.
It's so funny how like these weird moments from your life, like the addiction is obviously a huge thing. And many moments, but like a huge thing. But just the little things that you're talking about, I was just working on something where like moments from, and it has nothing to do with the characters, except it has to do with a feeling, but just moments from my life that are so vivid and little incidents that I can use.
Linda, I mean, this is a perfect example of it. When you were saying what is actor catnip, we were writing the Coop chocolate milk on the tie scene. And Linda said, "Oh, he grabs her boob," because I have a nephew with Tourette's, and she has a friend who is
a little inappropriate about things. And I thought, well, what if you have Tourette's? That just he grabs her tits.
So be open when you're writing a scene about what the scene is about.
Made it up.
Yeah, when you're open, when you're writing and you know what a scene is about. We know that she's going to be dressing him down. What does that actor have to do except stand there and get yelled at? And and it's Linda going, boob grab.
Because you got to how do you pull the floor out from underneath Edie Falco? You do that. Yeah. Right. And then she's, what's happening?
It's the fun of seeing, like, how is she going to hold it together?
Right, yeah. Right.
And also what's she going to do with it?
Right.
Because, the first thing I thought was, lawsuit. It's actually like an incredible power moment in a way. If she can handle it.
What's great is oh wow, she's got something on this guy now, and he's a doctor, and great, and all of a sudden doctor, and we didn't, we wanted. Look, it was hard to attack we didn't want to attack doctors, but we needed to show doctors being a little,
What we wanted to
buffoonish.
do more than attack doctors, we wanted. That there's a line in episode 2 where she says, doctors diagnose and nurses heal. Linda and I spent so many hours with so many emergency room nurses. And, they really are, their job, truly, and any one of them will describe it to you, is to keep you alive until the doctor can see you. The doctor's not the one keeping you alive. Their job is to keep you alive until a doctor can get to you. And, that was incredibly compelling to us. And, we also started to realize that the more nurses that we talked to, that being an emergency room nurse is like a tour of duty. Nobody else understands it. That's part of the relationship with Edie. You can't go home with your 2 little kids and your husband and talk about, that you stuffed somebody's guts back into their stomach today and they died anyway. It doesn't happen in there. It's a special breed of person. And I think that goes to the secrecy. I think that, Linda's impulse to have that ring go on and off, and that was all Linda's impulse. It's like, no, she's compartmentalizing. Compartmentalizing, that's a visual way to show it, but it taught me when Linda brought that up, that it's going to, that needs to be extrapolated. And that is why she has that affair. And that is why she can be a certain way with O'Hara. And that is why she can, it's just how that character is made.
Right.
And it was really great. It was exciting to start a character already in her addiction. It wasn't like we had to lead up to it. It was like, the whole point at the end, which still makes me laugh, that people go, oh, she's married? At the end, it's like, oh. That's so funny, but people do freak out. It's like, yeah, she's a mess, and then you start this show with a marriage in crisis, and this is how high the stakes are. But again, that's Edie. I think there's a lot of actors that could not have pulled this off. It would have been just.
It would have been more soapy, but she, the writing defeats that, but still I don't mean to call, when I say steely, it's not like she's cold, because she's not cold, but that strength, that
You're looking
sense
at
of
constant restraint. Yeah. There's something going on behind her eyes all the time. And
Right.
I think the other thing is, you could have an actress of equal talent play that role, but you won't have an actress that can generate the same kind of goodwill that Edie does. And we benefited from, the accumulation of goodwill that she had through Sopranos. Carmela, long-suffering wife. Carmela probably knew things that she should have, but people just loved her, right? And you could take another character, you could take another actor who does have equal talent, because there's always somebody with as much talent, no matter how talented you are. Okay, so let's say we find that actor. They're not going to be forgiven the things that Edie was forgiven, and we were writing some pretty unforgivable things really from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
And it's Edie that made it forgivable. And knowing that we were writing for Edie and knowing what we felt about her, we knew that we could go that dark. This is not the kind of script that would have sold on spec. This only happened because Edie Falco was already attached to it when we were brought in to modify it for her and her particular gifts, skill set, and goodwill that she had.
Right. That makes sense.
I think it's just a good thing to remember. I mean, we've had some amazing guests this year. We had Alex Ganson, Howard Gordon talking about Homeland. We had Mike White talking about Enlightened. Last week we had Lisa Kudrow and Michael Patrick King.
Assholes.
But they're such assholes. I'm glad you said it and not me. But
Somebody had to say it.
But it's such a strong choice. It's such a strong choice to have it start that late. It's like, yeah, this is the day where things are there. The thread is going to be pulled that is going to start you on your downward
Lizzie
spiral.
used to say, and we had to remind the writers, but she always say, remember, this is the worst. People are coming in here on the worst day of their life. Yeah. Okay, so how are we going to deal with that? And there's where it becomes so profoundly human. And that's why once you get to know Zoe and you get to know Thor and you get to know these other people, it is a workplace dark comedy, but there's some higher stakes than most people at work.
Thor is Linda's brother.
Yeah, we knew that, and Robin told me that, and he's so adorable.
Speaking of, about using your real life experience, Steve was diagnosed with diabetes when he was 9, and so we wanted to make that part of the storyline. I don't know if you've seen, I think it's season 2, when he, and I asked Steve, I said, look, because he has a bad eye, he has no vision in one eye, and he has an eye cap that he's worn for years, and I said, what do you think? He said, well, let me think about it overnight. And he said, yeah, I want to do it. And so we did the scene where Thor kind of comes clean with Jackie about his diabetes and says, look, it is bad, and he takes out his eye to show her, and I could choke up. Paul Feig directed that, by the way, who we love so much, and that scene was really amazing because in that moment, it's not really Jackie, it's Edie being so tender with Steve, and which, by the way, they've become very good friends and did a club act last year called The New Steve and Edie. I'm not kidding. They do in New York, and it's hilarious.
And it could not be gayer. Tell them whose birthday they sing at every year.
Oh my God! So Liza has them now. I'm like, you guys are so. And long story, I used to be Liza's chauffeur back in the 80s, and so I introduced my brother back then, and when he was like, oh, my God, yeah, it's a long story. So
that's so good.
But I haven't talked to her in a long time, and I just got a message. Baby, it's Liza, remember now. I come to my birthday party. Your brother's coming. And I was like, God, my brother's everywhere. So anyway, yeah, Steve and Edie sang at her birthday party.
We were going to have another night just with Linda called Linda was Liza's chauffeur. And that's basically all it is going to be.
To me, that's
Liza's story.
Speaking of those days back in the 80s, hello, Mimi and Jeanette, who we all were doing the clubs back then in the 80s. Yeah, Collins and Friedman, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Jeanette, I'm taking an improv class, and Jeanette's in my class.
Okay.
Hi, Jeanette, Mimi.
I love you guys so much. Right? Michael Patrick King's an asshole, right?
So this is a good time to maybe jump in about, we're going to take questions in a minute from the audience, but to jump in about your comedy, your backgrounds, because you have different backgrounds. And you were not a performer, correct?
No.
You were a poet.
Yeah.
And what's weird is I was both of those things. I was a comedy performer and a poet and a breath mint. But you started in comedy. You had a comedy act.
I was on the road on the circus. No, I was a theater major, and how I know these guys is we were all comedy teams back in the 80s. Peter Tolan and I were a comedy team. He created Rescue Me, and we were the comedy team of Wallem and Tolan. And back when Collins and Friedman, and then Michael Patrick King, what was his part? I forget. Yeah, so it was King and
Right.
yes, and so we were all comedy teams back then. Yeah, so we were improv and
But so
Where?
Linda,
Here or
New York and all the clubs. I used to waitress their show. You're still the funniest. You guys win.
so how does that influence? Not to sound too much like a FM radio station, but how does that influence your writing?
Oh,
I mean,
the improv?
the improv.
It meant everything. I would tell any writer in the world, take an improv class, period. It helps you it helps you write for actors better, period. I just think it opens you up a little more.
Because is it because you're in the moment going, you're learning to be in the moment going, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, and you ask yourself more interesting questions because part of the simple rules of improv is, you don't ask questions, who, what, why, where. It's very simple. So if you can improv with your characters, even in your head when you're writing, it'll help give it more, spontaneity. Because the truth, we like to turn corners fast on Nurse Jackie because people do. I mean, people aren't, people will say, and then all of a sudden, hey, people shift gears, and I think it's really fun, and improv helps you.
There's also a term that comes up a lot in writers' room, which is it sounds too written-y. Do you guys use something like that? It's like if you have an improv background, you can have things like be telling the story you want to tell, but they're just like these weird things that people would say that aren't just like all about every minute is talking about who I am.
Well, okay, for example, first of all, in the room, Linda will always say it's yes and when people are pitching. Keep going. Don't shut people down. Just keep going. But for example, the taking out of the eye, that could be a scene about Thor confessing his diabetes and taking out his eye. That's not what that scene is really about. That scene is about talking about addiction. He's saying, why do I like wedding cake? I'm fucking diabetic. Why am I doing this to myself? And he says, please don't tell acolytus. And then this goes to the heart of the show and who these people really are, these characters. He says, don't tell acolytus. She'll pull me out of trauma and I'll end up in maternity. Ugh. Okay, so there's little bits of joke. There's bits of truth. There's all of that. So that is, us bouncing around in a room saying, this is the scene, this is what, he's going to take that out, but, and he's going to show it, but we don't want to sync it with the tenderness. We don't want to sync it with the after school specialness about diabetes and a prosthetic eye. It's like, oh my God, if they put me up in maternity, I'm going to fucking puke.
Because people don't walk into a room and go, I'm good, let me bare my heart to you and then leave. Right. It's more like people bare their heart because it comes out of them because of something else that was going on. Or
that's the fun of Zoe too, because Zoe changes channels every 4 seconds. So you can start any scene. She could come. It's so fun, So I said to the penguin, it doesn't matter. She could say anything.
What's really fun is to be on set, and Merritt will be running her lines, and Linda will be like, no, wait, and she'll run out and she'll whisper in her ear, and the next scene, Merritt does the same scene, only she does a curtsy at the end, and it's because Linda's always got like that performing. She's like. Right. Curtsy at the end. You don't.
But
know.
In the room, the improv lady in me can float off into space. So Lizzie keeps me so beautifully grounded. And being a poet, she has taught me. I mean, hands down, the best writer I've ever worked with, right here, seriously. And you've taught me. What was great about working with Lizzie too, she didn't have any bad TV habits, like some of us do. It takes a while to get going. So we'll start working at 1. No, anyway. No, but you know what I mean. It's just so with her, again, being a poet and it was just a beautiful mixture of you can be improving and crazy, but let's keep it grounded in a really smart way.
The thing that's interesting too is a lot of times people will think that the most eloquent moments came from me and the funniest moments came from her, and often it's the opposite. I'll be the one who lights a fart, someone who lights. I'll be the one who has a character light a fart on fire, and she'll be the one who has them, saying something in Latin. I mean, it doesn't matter. We've learned over the years. We've fed off each other.
Well, lighting farts on fire is a perennial.
I
mean, it's like when in doubt, you can just always go to that.
It can be very poetic.
Yeah, it can if you do it right.
It's funny. Even saying that, the other advice I would say to everybody is don't ever throw any draft away, because 9 times out of 10, your first instinct, I'm thinking about certain like I think Michael told you when to take it away from me, because I'll doubt it. I'll just go, and you just take it away or you're good. And God bless you for always saying, no, you're good, because I think, oh, that's so simple. That can't be enough. And that's sometimes that's the best thing you've ever written, is the thing that comes out so easily.
It is. That's really true, because I think that and this is just like interpersonal dynamics, and I don't know if it's that interesting, but I think it probably might be. The thing that Michael told me was that you go into 2 kindergarten classes, and one of them has just gross finger painting on the wall, and the other one has like little perfectly articulated houses and dogs, and they're fun, and you think one group of kids is talented and the other one isn't, and it's the difference between the teachers. One group of teachers knows when to take the art away from the kid before they turn it into a mess. Now, as a teacher, I also taught poetry for a million years. When I take a draft away, all I'm doing is saying, you're good, you're good. Now, for me, the thing that Linda gives me is I will think of something really, really dark and horrible and funny, and I think it's too dark and horrible and funny to say. I think nobody's going to think it's funny because it's so wicked. And I'll whisper to her, and she's like, "Oh my God, it's the funniest thing I ever heard." Say it out loud. So so where she feels like I'm turning into a clown and I'm too funny, so I need to write this and make it fancy. And where I'm thinking I can't say that because it's too dark and probably not funny, she lets me know, "Oh, dude, I've been around comics. That's hilarious." And I can say, "Oh, I grew up around poets. That is beautiful writing."
Well, but the other thing too is, for me, that I'm just like a lot of dark with my light, and no, I really do. It's like
contrast.
The shows I like all have that. It feels more lifelike to me. But I had such a good point, and it just
off that, I'll fill in
so
until you
far
think of
away.
it. How's that?
Yeah, go.
We knew we would be sunk with a medical show if we went too sappy. So you have to go dark and comic and wicked, because it's inherent that there's sadness because people are
I remember,
dying
but I
left
have
and
to
right.
say this really fast or I'll forget again. But even if it's not funny, it'll be riveting. And that was something that I learned from my improv teacher, Bill Steinkeller, where he talks about committing to the moment. And he loves, just in this improv class, if you commit to what you're playing and you just commit and you go for the dark, it's hilarious. I once wrote a pilot with somebody, and there was a scene where it still makes me laugh. This guy's marriage was splitting up, and he's breaking up with her, and he's like, I'm just not happy, and it's my whole life, and I don't even know if I want to be an optometrist anymore. And then he sort of goes on, and it says he's crying. And first of all, every single man who came in and acted like he was crying made me laugh. But the more, I don't know why, I never got enough of it. But the more real they were, the more I would be crying. I would just be crying. And I can't even really explain why, but come on, it's funny to see guys cry, right? Just is.
Well,
let's take questions.
yeah, let's take questions. I can't answer that question.
You.
The mic is coming.
Yeah, wait for the mic, guys.
Okay, because we're not necessarily a doctor or whatnot. You talked about having research and talking to nurses. How much research did you have to do before you could evaluate and say, okay, I feel comfortable with talking about using certain terms in this profession?
Well, it's a thing that grew. In the beginning, we were just trying to pass a muster test. Like, is this cool? Is this going to fly? Is this going to be okay? We didn't have medical advisors. We didn't have time to figure out, everything that we would need to know. But over the course of the series, I mean, everything's online. You can Google, you can YouTube how to do it. You can YouTube how to start a line. You can YouTube how to do a Foley catheter. You can YouTube anything. You can also Google. Like, I've read, and the stuff that I've had to read in deep, thick, dense medical journals about what happens in hypothermia, at what stage, what happens, to just have it be. And I'll spend hours. I will spend hours to make sure that just that much of the thing is nailed down, so that then my characters can just be the characters who happen to know that, who went to medical school. So I ended up holding myself to a much higher standard as the show went on than I did in the beginning, because it was really important to me to be, when you see how many nurses watch the show, and it's like, I don't
let them down.
Yeah, I don't want to be Grey's Anatomy. I don't mean that mean, but I guess I kind of do. It's not about.
But I would say, that when we first started talking, when you first are talking about a pilot or a script, just I would say no matter what your character's job is, just really figure out where this person's going and then add the job stuff later. I think that we did get technical, but we knew, well, we had to figure out really who this person is. I don't care if you're writing about a nurse, a fireman, a football player, anything. It's really about God is in the details. Who is this person? And if you can really figure that out, then you can get technical advisors. People don't make you look really smart about
well,
stuff.
Well, also, actors are really super needy, and if you put them in an ER scene where somebody's come in with a crushed foot and they're like, do I apply pressure? Where do I put the stethoscope? What do I do? What is this called? How do I say this word? How long does he have to live? Is he going to bleed out? It's like, you better fucking know, because, you don't always have you don't have a nurse on. Well, I mean, we happen to have a nurse there who tells us, wrap the Band-Aid like this, put the stethoscope on the other way. But the lines, the dialogue, they, Eve Best, Edie, Falco, these are exacting professionals. You can't put gibberish or half truths of anything, and that they want to know. I am being a doctor all day, every day. I need to know that this is absolutely right. So
we promised we'd never say stat, ever.
Still haven't.
Every episode of ER was like, intubate him.
Well, Eve Best got mad at me
like
because
in the first 30 seconds, intubate him.
I promised Eve Best in all of season 4 that she wouldn't have to say intubate, and she didn't because she got so tired of saying it.
It's funny.
Because you got to intubate a lot of people.
So let me ask you, I'm going to jump in with a question, but then we're going to do more questions from you guys. But let me just ask you, in terms of knowing where you're going, when you were writing the pilot, did you get the idea of what the end of that first season was with the incredible thing with Edie going to see Kevin? I mean, did you know at the end of the first isn't that the end of the first season?
Right.
Edie would go to
In other words, when you were writing the pilot, were you envisioning the end of your first season?
No.
Okay, so I'm just curious. So what did you know? Like, what did you know about where you were going?
Well, the the business part of it is you just know, okay, you better pack this thing so people are interested and they see 5 years of stories with this. It's that simple. It's like, okay, that first, you have interest, you have an interesting engine and some people around her, and wow, this could last.
Right. So it's like, it's not so much that you never had to go in and say, we know how the first season ends. It was more that you were creating a situation where people were looking at it going, oh my God, that could happen, that could happen.
Yeah, I think that every single pilot to series to first season experience is different. Okay, I imagine it is. Ours happened really quickly. Ours happened right after the strike, and we wrote it in October. We cast it in April. We shot it in June, and then we started up our writers' room in like July so that we could start shooting in November that first season. So we were going nonstop. So we almost had to do some real-time stuff. We got the first one written, second one written, third one written. We started realizing Eddie's kind of creepy. This is great. Okay, Kevin's really in the dark. The kids are this way. That one's got anxiety. This one's kind of free-floating. Okay. All right, O'Hara's O'Hara. Coop's being a douche. Okay, what's going to actually... Eddie's got to go to that bar. Eddie's got to follow her home. That made sense. We were getting to know them in real time. Linda, myself, and the writers were getting to know them in real time at about halfway through that first season of shooting it, of writing it. I was laying on the floor in Linda in our office, and I looked up and it had ceiling tiles like that. And only they were that kind of translucent glass, that plastic. And I thought to myself, what if a rat ran across? Because it was a really gross place. And I sat up and I'm like, Wallem, Wallem, Wallem. Here we go. Okay, she started the season on the floor. She's going to end the season on the floor. Picture this. Laying down, old-fashioned nurse's uniform just like before, da-da-da-da, rat runs across, and she goes, did anybody else see that? And we knew that it was not conclusive. We knew that it was, but we knew that it was the right image. And so for the second half of that season, we just wrote to getting her on the floor. So Linda, as in improv, would say, well, what brings her to the floor? I would say overdose. And then she would say, why would she overdose? And we'll say, well, Kevin, Edie. Okay, so her compartmentalization is falling apart. So we worked backwards from, I had a vision. Linda had certain questions that would elicit answers and had answers to certain things that were questions that I would have. And we just sort of built it from there.
But, it sounds like just as a team you work very improvisationally, because there's certainly people, especially when there's an episode of 13, the Homeland guys talked about they did know what they were writing too. Right. or people will arc a season, but it sounds like you did set up this rich world that let you go in all these different directions, but you kind of followed it.
Yeah, and that's part of kind of unclenching a little too, whatever it is you're writing. You got to let go, because it is a business and people are going to have input, and heavens forbid sometimes they have a good idea. But it's not always. Again, Marcy Carsey taught me, don't take their notes, listen to their confusion, right? Don't take their notes. But you have to hold everything lightly, because it'll kill you in this business if you start to resent the notes and the changing and TV is wide open. You got to be flexible with it. And because we loved our characters, we knew, okay, this isn't in stone. It can't be. But once we know where we're going, okay, it's a game. You got to play the game with your buyers and the people who are going to have thoughts,
And that was our first year. Our second year going in, we had to pitch out the entire season. Our third year, we had to go in and pitch out the entire season. So the first season is the only one that we were given that leeway for, but that's because we were on such a collapsed timetable.
At what point was your second season picked up? I was just sort of wondering that, because
the night after we aired.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Wow. Because I've worked on shows, unfortunately, that got canceled where we had a huge cliffhanger, and then it was like, oh, well, sorry, make up your own second season. Doesn't that suck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Should we take yes? Yeah, she's bringing it over.
Hi. I wanted to just sort of go back to what you were talking about having some dark with the light, and I wanted to find out from both of you, writing a very dark comedy, how you know when too far is too far in order to still keep her redeemable.
Well, I don't know what too far is for Jackie. Do
I
you?
think before I thought putting her in a rehab was too far. I did, and I was like, no way, Then I went on my little journey last year and went, oh yeah, she's going to rehab. Yeah. Honestly, I was such a bitch about it. I was like, no, not on my watch. Oh my God. So
when you look back at that, see, that's fascinating, because when you look back at that, are you realizing, wait a minute, I thought the character would never do that, quote unquote, because I wasn't into doing that. I mean, is that the wrong thing to say?
No, the thing is that, we met a character in a script, and then we retranslated her.
Right.
And then Edie inhabited her for 3 years. And that's not the Jackie that we dreamed up.
Right.
It evolves, and she belongs to all of us. And so, part of Edie's, hunger was for consequences to start piling up. And, if you were to read all of the scripts back to back, you'd read, oh yeah, this makes sense, this is great, it's progressing nicely. But what happens is we're up the air for 9 months at a time. So when we picked up season 3 at exactly where season 2 ended, our viewers started to drop. They're like, nothing's really happening. And it's like, because people had children, parents died, people got divorced, people moved on in that 9 months, that nobody was interested in going back and telling that slow a story. And it's not that it was told any slower than season 1 or season 2. It's that we picked up in the exact moment. And I think that in some ways, if we were on a straight up network and did 22, those 22 episodes back to back would all make sense, but it felt like a standstill for a moment. So season 4 was about reigniting it, and the greatest way to do that was to have that hospital get bought and have that woman thrown into rehab and see what happens. And Linda and I always fought about whether or not she'd go to rehab. I always knew that eventually she would, and Linda's like, she's not. She's gonna heal herself through ayahuasca. She's gonna heal herself with a shaman. There are other ways. And then finally she was like, let's go to rehab. I guess I'm open to it. And
because it also being sober all those years and watching so much sober TV, it's so hard to make that fresh. I don't like AA meetings. I just don't know how to make it fresh. I think we did a pretty good job in the first 2 episodes she's in treatment, including we got
Wallem directed the first 2 episodes, by the way. Wow. And she directed the last 2 from last year.
And what's great, we brought in Laura Silverman, who we needed from the comeback. She played Jane on the comeback. And what I love about Laura is she goes toe to toe with Jackie as her drug counselor, and it's just awesome to see. I guess it never occurred to me back when I was on my little whatever, like, oh yeah, this would be so interesting for her to have to play. Jackie still has to deal with her lying. She's just built that way. But now it's so slippery. The floor is so slippery because she's having feelings. And that sucks.
Well, it just gives you something to play, but it was probably good also that you resisted it, because if you had done it too early, then...
Yeah, and I love
You shoot
season
your
3,
wad,
by
if
the
you'll
way.
excuse the
It
expression.
really teed up what season 4 is, I think. So
You don't have the payoff and the relief and the fun and the explosion of season 4 if you hadn't been packing the cannon with gunpowder slowly and steadily all through season 3. And when people say nothing happened, it's like her marriage fell apart. She got confronted. She got put on probation. All of this shit happened to her. Things were absolutely unraveling. Her daughter went on medication. All of this stuff was happening. But I think that people were anxious because for us, we just think, oh God, we're on episode 32, but the world is saying we've been watching her for 3 years.
Right. So
That's
that's a big disconnect.
And it's something
Right.
that I never, so if you're ever working in premium cable and you have, take into consideration, you've got 9 months off and people, you're lucky to get your audience back, but keep in mind, truly, I made, part of it was part of the undoing was me, for the very simple reason that I would go on fucking Facebook after and I would read the boards, and people would after the premiere of season 2, they're like, I cannot believe that how did Jackie get off the floor? I don't understand how she got off the floor. Oh, suddenly she's on a beach and everything's fine. And I thought, oh, Linda, listen, I think the minute she says blow me in the mirror, we have to pick
You've
up
been
in that
reading. You're
exact
online
moment.
again, aren't
We have
you?
to pick up
You've been
that-
reading online.
I know, but because you
Stop
don't. Because you
reading
don't.
and
I'm
don't
in
read
touch with the
anything.
fans. I want to be in
Nothing.
touch with the fans. I want
don't
them to know
have fan face or whatever it's
know that-
called.
I want them to know that I
do
listen.
email. Stop reading everything.
And we picked up the minute that it left off.
And seriously,
We were just in their office, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm serious, by the way. If you want to be a healthy writer, don't read the trades. Don't read Deadline Hollywood. Don't read any of it. Back in 1943, when we started, remember? In the room, we had the mimeograph. We didn't even have computers. No, but seriously, in a writer's room now, everybody's on the computer. It's like get
it's
everything
so
out
toxic.
of the room.
Okay.
wrong.
People, when you end up on a staff,
Don't
if
bring
you're
your
on a staff,
computer in.
if you bring your computer in and sit there looking at Facebook, next year, anybody who I'm seriously firing them.
Because I know you're laughing at a
Over
kiddie
it.
YouTube thing, so
Over
stop it.
Liz, you
Close
could just tell them not to bring their computer in, too, before you fire them.
No, she's saying.
Yeah.
She's saying, please don't, or I'll fire you.
Right.
Warning shot.
Yeah, she's.
Right. Oh, gotcha.
But again, as far as your spiritual health as a writer, we used to say over at Carsey Warner, the trades, 5 minutes to read, 5 days to get over. Okay? So don't read them.
I couldn't agree more with
Just
that.
swimming in resentment, because
I've
it has
said
nothing
that.
to do with what you're doing.
Yeah,
at
no, I've
all.
said that so many times. I've said I've never, ever, ever, ever looked at the trades and been glad that I did.
And if some 8-year-old in Vancouver is writing, why is Jackie on the floor? And you're getting all upset. It's like, stop reading that stuff.
I'm going to bring you all down with me.
But it is not to belabor it, but it is a problem of where to come back in when so much time has passed. I didn't really think about it until you just helped me think about it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would understand myself where to come back time-wise.
I actually was fighting the first scene being treatment. I was like, I got a little precious about it all. Remember, and even as directing it was in a different order. And we talked, and you know what? You were right. It was like, go ahead and start there. It was, sometimes we think, because I don't know if you saw the first episode of this season yet. We have this, it starts with her in rehab, and then we cut to this, George Thorogood song, and then she's. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and she goes down into a thing of pills. That was originally, it was a whole different order, but finally we just started with her walking in, and it was like, yeah, let's just get there. Don't waste time. We're season 4. Get in there.
It's such a huge thing that I think we can all get out of this. They always talk about starting a scene as late as possible in the scene.
Yes.
But you're talking about starting the show.
Yeah.
But this was this whole thing about where to start. It always really made me admire 24 when they would just start, seasons, and it would be 2 years later, and he would be addicted to drugs, and you would find that out in the first 5 minutes. And it was, it's like we always think the audience isn't going to get it or be able to keep up with it, but
And maybe I think things have changed as far as how I think it's okay to start a scene. It's a basic thing, but show an interesting way to start a scene. People entering, la la la, who cares? And in editing, you're going to put a gun in your mouth because they take 12 years to get from the door to the desk. Just get to something interesting right away. I mean, we take too long sometimes teeing stuff up. People will be with you, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Don't let me snap anymore. What's that?
Let's all do it. Come
you
on.
can't snap
Let's all do it.
anymore.
It's fun. Yes, question.
I was just going to say that I write that long way, but then I come into where I wrote. You know what I mean?
And if you film it, you'll cut it on
I get
film.
rid of my first 7
And
pages.
let's be honest, sometimes you write something, go, oh my God, it's genius. You're like, oh, that thing I spent most time on. Blah, goodbye. Well, so I tell you, don't throw away your first drafts. Anyway, go ahead.
It's really exciting that both of you are here because seeing the pilot again tonight and having seen the 4th season premiere 3 days ago, I did. It's just, well, how much it has really changed, and yet you guys have such a great tone, and you've made such an incredible control freak of the world who now is going to have to go through rehab. So my question is, all the tone for all of the shows has been so fantastically funny and light and dark, and your directors. So how do you work with your directors? And I saw that you've been directing. So how does that all work? How do you pick your directors? How does that all work?
My favorite directors have been directors who either had been performers or had been writers, because it brings another dimension to what they do. Steve Buscemi, Paul Feig, Bob Balaban, Randall Einhorn, fabulous director, but started out as a DP on like the original Survivor. So he's just like game. He's just like, he's a very active, athletic kind of director. Love him a lot. But I think that people who have multiple talents bring that, and so I look for that because it's just another level of translation, and that's what was so.
And because we cross-board, we shoot 2 episodes at once because we have 10 days to do 2 episodes. So we have a director. They come in. It doesn't do any sense to do prep for 1 episode, so they do 2. So everyone we have come in, we know, okay, we're going to have you for 2 episodes, and we kind of say, look, we're on the set, we're with you. We are, we're very hands-on. We are going to. I'll say to them, if you can, I'm going to walk. We are going to walk with you to talk to actors. We are going to, because all these years. I'm too old and bitter and menopausal now to go, may I, on my own set, go talk to my,
Oh, yeah, I hate
So we say,
that.
you know what, this is a team thing. We do this together. We are going to, we're going to go in there. We're going to have thoughts. And honestly, here's the truth. It's our party. So help us get there, but it's tricky, but you have to, that's a big part of executive producing is you need to make sure the vision is right. Because if you're up in the room hiding and coming down and then seeing dailies going, that's not right. That's where TV sucks. I'm sorry. I think it gets off track. You have to be on it to make sure the tone is right. We might be doing something. I go, Lizzie, wait, come here. Something feels off. And it's a stunning scene she's written, but something's off. And she'll go, oh, no, it's coming from this, not this. And it's like, thank you. Okay. So.
But do you ever find the difficulty of your busy writing and it's hard to get out there? Or
what's great is we figure it out. We just do. One of us is always on the set and or up in the room.
I can tell you if I'm upstairs working on an outline or a script and Linda's downstairs shooting something that I've written, I can tell you right now that there is nobody that I trust more to. And if there's a problem or a line's not working or something, because we have been so symbiotic, knows exactly what it is. Similarly, if she's off doing something, I will say Wallem will flip her gourd if you keep it lit like that, and if you have him enter like that, she will kill you. She will kill you. We just have each other's back like that.
And that's a good thing to know when you're moving forward, no matter who you're working with, your DPs or your directors and anybody. You just have to kind of set the tone before they come on stage. And we have a no asshole rule at the show. You just can't be an asshole. And if you are, bye.
I guess I'm not going to be working there.
But no, we found a PA yelling at an actor once, and it's like they turn around and it's like, goodbye. Thank you. This isn't going to work. And we like to say, gee, we're not having fun. So you just kind of have to, that's how and we've had great directors. We've had really beautiful directors. So.
You have amazing people who come back again and again. For people who don't know, will you just explain what cross-boarding is? Just so
Sure,
people don't know the
crossboarding is
term.
okay. With a single camera, you have to board your show in order to. It's insane to do what we do in 5 days for one episode. So you have 10 days, and you have to literally with your ADs board it. So okay, we're going to shoot. Okay, we can do this many scenes on the stage. We do 8 days in and 2 days out. No.
But do you shoot a
Shooting 2
scene?
episodes at once. We try to keep it kind of in sequence. Try to do a lot of one episode, but sometimes you have to go back and
It's totally
forth.
logic based. You've got your ADs are going to sit down and they're going to say, we have these 4 actors that are available on these 4 days, and we're going to shoot all of the nurses station things with those 4 actors in these 4 days. Right. Now we're going to lose this actor, so we can't do any scenes with him in it on this day. So all of the scenes that we can do without this actor that take place in trauma, we're going to do here, and it'll be in both scripts. So what's going on is, as we're doing that, your wardrobe, your makeup, your hair has to be so on point because they have to. Oh my God, you're doing a scene from 103, not 104. Get him out of that tie and into that. I mean, it's all.
And
it's
this year
logic.
was crazy because All Saints is getting busier because of hospital closings. So we had to shift colors of scrubs and extras, and it was insane. But God bless those people who figure it out. A few things fall through the cracks, but pretty good so far.
Because also about production, not only does it save money to crossboard, but sometimes the thing that takes the longest is lighting. So once an area is lit and you don't have to move the cameras,
right.
You're saving yourself time.
That makes me think of something too. If you're ever writing a spec pilot, keep in mind production, because if you're going to scare the shit out of any executive who opens and goes, couple in wheelbarrow going down Niagara Falls, they're going to go, blow me, I can't shoot that. You know what I mean? So be very picky about what you put in, because they're going to read it. Is this producible?
They're reading it with a calculator doing this.
Yes. So keep it simple, and keep it in your back pocket. If you have this amazing, I want them to go, jump out of a plane or something, but just keep that in mind when you're trying to sell a spec. Keep it producible, because you might solve somebody's problem the moment they read it, but keep it producible.
What you were talking, I love that point. What you were talking about before, about what actors love, and about what am I going to play? What am I playing? Because what I always like to say is what actors love, I think, is to be in a part that shows a lot of them, that shows all that they are, so that they can just shine through, like in their complexity, right?
And sometimes not all at once. They want to come, we like our
right.
characters kind of pop out like turtles. We learn something new every now and then. Like, oh my God, Acolytus is dancing with a baby in her office with the door closed. Cool.
Yeah, but that is really cool.
Lizzie and I always said, let's just do cracks into these characters sometimes, and they get to play it, but it doesn't mean they have to play all of it at once. You don't want the actors playing everything at once either, because
no, totally not. Yeah. Totally not. But I mean, I love that you were saying, because that doesn't cost extra. That's something I always think about. In other words, knowing how to write subtext, knowing how to write, the scene is about 3 different things. It isn't just about one thing. In other words, 3 different things are getting accomplished in one scene. That to me is that's really good budgeting. In other words, that makes it 10 times more interesting, but that doesn't cost extra. That's not money.
Yeah. And people do, 3 people in the scene, some person can be talking about bowling and the other 2 people are having a fight. It doesn't matter. Nobody has to check in with each other. People are sloppy. Writing can be messier.
I totally agree with that.
It doesn't seem so written. It makes it feel.
It's a lot more fun to read.
It makes it feel
too.
more surprising and more unexpected, and therefore more lifelike and just more fun to watch, because you know what it's like when even like I'm thinking of the example of a stand-up comic, and they get into these rhythms, and you get so bored with it. Whereas, I don't know.
Well,
in life, was my point for tonight.
You're trying to have something happen, or you're trying to explain yourself, and an embarrassing thing happens on top of that. In other words, in life, when you're trying to explain yourself, you spill something all over yourself, and then you have to deal with that, and you're still trying to explain yourself, and then somebody walks in, and it's somebody that didn't know you're not supposed to be there. I mean, in other words, embarrassing things happen all the time, but we tend to homogenize them out of our work. I mean, we tend to, because this scene has to happen and it has to be about something, but it's like actually the scene happens despite itself. It sort of tumbles out. That's just my 2 cents. So
Do we take one more question? Yes, we'll take your question, and then we're going to have our break, and then we'll come back and hopefully get a ton of your questions. This is too much fun. We want to keep them all to ourselves.
I was just wondering, from the timeline that you discussed for doing the pilot and the first season just seemed to happen all at once, do you feel that there's anything you were able to get away with that if you had had a sort of longer production schedule, an executive somewhere might have tried to put the brakes on it?
Totally. Totally. We were, okay, this is it's 5 years ago, so I'm sure there's a statute of limitations on getting in trouble. Greenblatt was the president of Showtime. Greenblatt had also been one of the executive producers and responsible for 6 Feet Under. And when he became the president of Showtime, HBO, he was persona non grata at table reads. And he was like, really? Really? I provided you with one of your best shows. I'm now the president of Showtime, and I am going to take the first lady of HBO and have her on Showtime. That was his mission. So it was moving so fast that, his hunger to have that great actress at his network, and that she fell in love with our vision of this script, kind of gave us so much license, because we didn't have time to give them an outline for the script. We didn't have time to hear their contributions. He's like, how fast can you get the script? We wrote that script in 8 days. We got on a plane 3 days later to go meet with Richie and her manager and
on
Edie
Halloween, because remember the strike started November 1st.
Yep.
So that was the last day we could meet her. So.
And she had read everything and she sat in this meeting. She said, I've read everything. I've had all these characters. This is the one I just kind of walk around my house and she's in my head. I mean, that's kind of the one that I like. I mean, are we going to do
And we
this?
were told also, look, she might not say anything. And she's like, so when do we start? And so we're like.
Then her cautious manager called us about a month later and said, well, we really like this, and I think we'd like to move forward, but first could you come out to dinner come out to New York one more time so we could have dinner and see if the chemistry was really the chemistry. And so the whole thing on Showtime's end was, don't blow it, don't blow it, don't blow it. So when we've got Edie and we've brought, it's like, we went out hunting and look what we brought back for you.
And Bob said, take this with you, and it was a mock-up of what the poster ended up being. And they put Edie's head on it. So it's like, so we're at dinner. I'm like, okay, I don't know how to gracefully do this, but Edie, we started pulling this above the
So for the whole
Star
first year,
Wars.
for the whole first year, we were able to go, well, we think Edie's really going to like this. This is the stuff that she responds to. Now, season 2, they got a little more, well, it's not funny enough. Wait, you know what? Now it's too funny. Now it's getting sitcom-y. Now it's too dramatic. And they had all of these opinions, and it's like, okay, it's going to kind of just be all over the place, but you already know what the world is. There's room for the darkness. There's room for the sort of pratfall nature of it, and there's room for the dark humor. There's room for all of it because we created a pretty big world. We got really, really lucky.
And again, being flexible helps in these situations because, again, there's a lot of money on the table, and there's a lot of, we were like, oh, man, if we fuck up Edie Falco's career, we suck. We really suck because that sucks. So there was a lot of fear that was driving this. So
I think Bob didn't want to be the one that fucked up Edie's career, so he let us do what we were going to do so that if it didn't work out, he's like, it was them.
It was a unique situation that Bob was very hands-on, and it was like he kind of, one of the hardest parts of network TV is 1,000 people on a note call, and with Bob it was Bob, and then we have Perlina Ibokwe, who's our wonderful executive, who it was really just 2 voices we kind of had to listen to, and Lionsgate was great and quiet, which was great, and so we had a kind of a unique situation. But again, network, you have to find out. You got to just figure out, and you kind of have to teach them how to give notes too, sort of.
I know writers in the room are going to want to hear about how do you teach executives how to give you notes. I know that you're serious. I know that you're serious because I do actually believe that it's very important to understand that.
I say that I'm going to take every single note and I actually give it my best effort because, as I said, this, as you said, this is my first gig in TV. Everything else was features or poetry before then. Linda, on the other hand,
fuck them.
Blowtorch.
It's usually my first thing, and then I'm like, all right, wait, let me go through it.
No, and she'll fight with them, and she'll get in their face, and she'll bark back. She's like, put him on the phone. Who do I have to talk to? Yeah, well, I'll call Bob myself. I'll call David Nevins myself. I mean, she is absolutely fearless, and I just sit back and go, I tried it.
So can I just be honest and say that I've done that once in a while, and it hasn't worked out so well for me. Because what I don't like about
You didn't have me in the background baking cookies and making the house smell good and going, she didn't mean it. Here, can you have some cookies?
You're right.
Here's the draft with all your notes in it. You're going to see that it doesn't work, and we'd like to find something in between if that's possible. Meanwhile, Linda's out there going, rah, 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 rah.
No,
I'm like, cookies? Anybody?
I got to. I mean, I started in TV with these guys, Marshall and Ed, and the way that they were.
Excellent television, by the way.
Very good TV.
Very excellent television.
Thank you. And they did not ever get angry noticeably. They probably got angry inside, but I mean, I never heard them yell at any executive ever, ever, ever. I also didn't see them take very many notes. And I was sort of taught that. But what I find is I get too emotional. And, I've watched you do it much more calmly, in my opinion.
Usually when I am calm. Like when I lose it, then it really, like the time I hung up on an executive, that did not go well for me. Eventually that was a project I got fired off of.
I feel like I lose my power when I get emotional, even though, I may not be going to take the note, let's say. But in other words, it doesn't help my case, so to speak.
I think it's person to person, and I think it's experience to experience, because I've seen Linda absolutely explode and then have a blow up in her face. I've also seen her explode and have them just relax. Right. I have stayed pretty neutral, but when I get pissed, they just don't even know it hit them because it's so out of character.
It's so unusual
and to be fair in this particular dynamic, I've been able to not have to fight a lot because Linda will fight a lot. And when something's really, really, really important, I'm the one who goes in and starts lighting matches. And they're like, you guys, seriously, don't. It's lit. She wouldn't have. I mean, okay, well, just give her what she wants.
Right. Because it's so unusual. That makes a lot of sense. Well,
let's take a 10-minute hard 10, guys. Real
hard
10. And then we will come back. They've got to leave right at 10 o'clock. So we will take 10 minutes and come back for more fun.